Joining us now, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Michael, thanks for being here, Mr. Ambassador. Let's start with the Prime Minister's demands there, his requirements for peace. Hamas, saying to destroy all of Hamas is one thing, and certainly some blows have been made against leadership. But how can you effectively say that all of Hamas will be wiped out? And perhaps more importantly, how can you say to de-radicalize, how can the Israelis de-radicalize a people, particularly a people right now that they feel like they're under siege, civilians included?
Good morning, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on again. I'm not a spokesman for the Prime Minister, but I think that those points that he raised in that Wall Street Journal article, I think about 98% of Israelis would sign on to that. It's not politically divisive here at all. And the thing speaks for itself. I mean, Hamas has said literally that if they survive this, they will reorganize, rearm, and mount another murderous attack. So there's really no option but to continue the war to try to destroy Hamas. The de-radicalization will not be done by Israel. It has to be done by the international community. Which means that you look at these textbooks and see, where young Palestinians are being taught that the greatest thing they can do in life is to kill Jews. And I've seen these textbooks, Jonathan. They literally make me sick. And they go to summer camps to learn to kill other Jews. It's in the schools. That's got to stop. We've raised an entire generation, seen this entire generation of Palestinians who are capable of committing the atrocities on October 7th. I know how they got there. I know how they became those horrendous beings that were able to mutilate, behead, and rape and burn people, because that's the way they were. That was the way they were instructed. It's the way they were raised. And so that has to end. I think that speaks for itself. And that's not just an Israeli interest. It's a Palestinian interest. It's certainly a Middle East and an international interest to change the way these children are being raised. Destroying Hamas again is not just an Israeli interest. It's a Palestinian issue. It's a regional interest and an American interest. So I think that not just most Israelis, the vast majority of Israelis would sign on to what the Prime Minister wrote. I think the people in the world who care about the Middle East, who care about peace, would sign on to it as well.
Mr. Ambassador Elise Jordan here, but isn't it bigger than the question of textbooks when it comes to de-radicalization? What is going to be the long-term impact of so many civilian casualties, because Hamas uses civilians as human shields, but also the bombings all across the country? And do you have any response to the New York Times report that over 2,000-pound bombs were deployed, were bombed, attacked on areas in the south where Gazans were told to flee for safety?
Hi, Elise. Yeah, I know the report. And I know that every bombing conducted by the Israeli Air Force goes through a very lengthy legal approval process. You have to actually see it being done. And yes, it's intensely complex because Hamas is using its civilian population as shields. It's more than that. Beneath the cities of Gaza are these vast matrices of tunnels that go on for literally hundreds of miles and hundreds of feet deep. So the actual city is using as a shield. And it is nightmarish. It's nothing short of nightmarish. So, of course, nothing is perfect here, and every civilian casualty is one civilian casualty too much. I say that without reservation. But the Israeli forces are doing their absolute best. We're being attacked from every border. Yesterday, we got a Christmas gift, quote unquote, from Hezbollah. One of Hezbollah rockets struck a church in northern Israel, destroyed that church. So we are fighting this multi-front war against terror, and we have no choice but to prevail and to take every precaution possible, given the immense complexities of this situation.
Ambassador Al Sharpton, when October 7th happened, many of us expressed outrage and continue to, and I think most of the world rallied around Israel defending its civilians and others that were killed. Now, as we move forward, with Rob Dermer going to Washington today, is it not the challenge of Netanyahu and Israel to show that they are as concerned about civilians in Gaza as the world was concerned about civilians in Israel? And to the view of watching 2,000-pound bombs dropped and children being killed and no humanitarian aid brought through, doesn't that undermine the moral authority that was there in October 7th? and to see even the families of hostages heckling Netanyahu, saying, do something right now. How do we balance that with your desire to continue to defend Israel?
Well, thank you for the comments, Reverend Sharpton, as always. Again, we're going to do our utmost to try to minimize the civilian casualties. The humanitarian corridors are open. We actually opened our major crossing into the Gaza Strip, the ironically named Vineyard of Peace crossing, Karen Shalom, which had been closed because Hamas was shelling it, and we couldn't get Israeli truck drivers to actually go through it. Now it's reopened, but the big delays are caused by the UN. It's not caused by Israel. And we have plenty of aid that's ready to go in if UN will process it. And then when it actually goes in, it's being stolen by Hamas. And all this has been filmed. You can see it. And the people of Gaza are getting fed up. In fact, Hamas opened fire on a crowd of people in Gaza, Palestinians, who were complaining about the fact that their aid was being stolen by Hamas. So the devil here is in the details. There's a lot of details here. The aid is going in. Israel's doing its best to try to minimize the civilian casualties. And that's the case that Israel has to make. We understand that the visuals here are very, very difficult. But we also understand that we really have no choice. 115 hostages still in the hands of Hamas. An offer was made to Hamas for a prolonged ceasefire. They turned it down. It's not if Israel's not trying to offer to get these hostages back. And we're up against an enemy whose level of cruelty, of inhumanity, is very difficult for people who have trouble grappling with evil in the world. And you as a pastor know that there is evil in the world, and this is what we're dealing with. And it is an immense challenge, not just strategically, militarily. It's a moral challenge, and we're profoundly aware of it. Yesterday, I visited some of the villages that were attacked on October 7th in Kfar Aza and Nahal Oz, and you saw these wonderful houses where these people lived in peace, and they were burnt and decapitated and mutilated in their beds. And you come away and you say, what kind of evil in the world is capable of doing this? And this is what we're up against, and we have no choice but to fight.
Ambassador, specifically to something you said that the UN is not processing the aid. Could you explain what's happening there when the UN is saying that over half of the Gazan population is starving and that 90% of Gazans don't have a daily meal?
And we have said, and even our president, Isaac Herzog, has said that the delays are caused by the UN itself. The UN is hoarding food. It's not distributing food. Again, this has been documented. It's not just the Israeli government saying this. And there's a terrible breakdown of the UN machinery there. But from our point of view, there should be no shortages there, and Israel is fully prepared to provide that population with what its basic needs. We understand that the situation there is extremely arduous for these people because they've been moved around. We have no choice. You either keep the population in the middle of a combat zone, in which case far more people are going to be killed, or you try to move them away. And when you move them away, you have to try to provide humanitarian aid. Israel's prepared to do this. We strongly feel that the UN has let them down.
Okay. Former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and good holidays to you all.
I appreciate that.